Today, I'd like to talk about ChatGPT and the use of AI tools. I know there's a lot of information out there. I know there's a lot of people very scared about the tools like ChatGPT and how they can be misappropriated. I know there's a lot of concerns about things in school and students using it for cheating and stuff. I think there's a lot of negative press on it. Today, what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you a couple examples of things that I personally are using ChatGPT for and how it's made my life a lot simpler. The first example I'd like to kind of look at right here is basically, let me state that you would generally put in any kind of query here at the bottom of the page. So I'd like to talk about one right here. This is one that I recently did right here. I requested right here, this text here that it resides here is text from a blog post. And my query that I wanted to share, which is search the following document and extract the top 5 keywords. And then I simply went ahead and I pasted that in. Then ChatGPT read all of that and it produced this list right here of keywords: chunking, rule of 3, communication, memory, and information processing. Now, when I talk about that, one of the big things, this is not a great example from the standpoint of this right here was a relatively simple query. And I'd like to kind of take a look at some other potential examples here. Let's move to another one right here. This is one, this is a little bit bigger. I'm going to specifically talk about the value of prompt engineering. So in this particular situation, my prompt was quite long, not something that you would typically put into a Google search. And I said right here, develop a series of 5 interview questions that are non-typical and thought-provoking for the position of the Director of Culinary Services at ABC Senior Living Center. Questions should endeavor to explore the applicant's strategy to attract and maintain both front of the house and back of the house employees, the soft skills to manage a diverse staff, creating public culinary events open to the public to create brand awareness for the facility and leads for the marketing department. And effectively, this is what it returned. The 5 questions. How do you plan to attract and retain front of the house and back of the house employees with different skill sets and motives, especially in a competitive job market? You can see that ChatGPT added a lot of context to this and created these 5 questions that are pretty good questions to ask if I was going to do an interview for somebody. So when it comes to an interview, this is a very valuable tool. Another one, another way that I've used that is here. Again, we talk about, prompt engineering. I ask it to, very specific, write me a Google review for ABC Plumbing. I added that the text showed up precisely at the scheduled on time. The lead technician, whose name was Travis, was knowledgeable, polite, and respectful, and the response time between the time I called for the service and when Travis and Mike showed up was less than 2 hours on a holiday. So here its response was, sure. It says, I recently had the plumbing emergency on a holiday and called ABC Plumbing for help. I was impressed with how quickly they responded. In less than 2 hours, Travis and Mike showed up at my door. Travis, the lead technician, was knowledgeable, polite, and respectful. So the idea is it adds context to what I originally put in the prompt to make something that's very nice. Now, clearly, you could just copy that and paste that into a Google review or something. All right, this is one I recently used. This is a very long prompt again. This is for, I have some rental properties, and I said, write me a message to a renter that has expressed interest in one of my rental units based upon the listing with multiple pictures of the interior and exterior of the unit. Explain that the pictures are the best way to view the property at this stage of the application process due to high demand of our rental property. We can't staff the units for private viewings for anyone who just has a passing interest in seeing the property. We require all interested parties to complete a free, notice I emphasized the word free, pre-screening form. Applicants whose self-reported pre-screening information matches our basic criteria will be prompt to link to a formal process, and that there will be a charge of $55, so on and so forth. So I gave it a lot of information about our procedure, and then it wrote me this letter here that I then cut and paste into a tool that I call Turbo Tenant that effectively allows me to respond to the individual. It goes in, adds a lot more context. You notice it took my uppercase free, included that in there. I included the fact that it cost $55. It included that, but it added more context to that particular letter. Now I copied this into a Word document. I might have wordsmithed a little bit here and there, but essentially I provided basic information. It provided a more detailed explanation. Quite frankly, I could say, do it again. And it will go ahead and, in fact, go ahead and write me a different version of that if I wasn't particularly happy with what it was going to go ahead and say. So at this point, I will stop generating that. Another example here, I work with a real estate agent, and so we were talking about marketing copy. And so here's an example. Write me some landing page marketing copy for a real estate agent in Aspen, Colorado. Include why people would want to move to, it says Vail. I pushed that in there, including the many winter and summer activities. Stress the fact that the agent is a top performer at Sotheby's Real Estate and who is a native of Aspen. Include that she has experience as a broker, 17 years. And then it goes ahead and writes this whole thing. Welcome to Aspen, Colorado, a beautiful mountain town that boasts breathtaking scenery, endless outdoor activities in a community. Here it talks about the individual. You notice I made a couple mistakes here, kind of on purpose. I did not include the name of the person, and I included the name Vail in there. But as you read through this entire thing, it understood that I had made a mistake, and it continued to use the word Aspen in there. Because I forgot to name the individual, it made up a name right here, Jane Doe. So effectively, all I'd have to do is go in there and change Jane Doe to the client's actual real name. So it not only is requires a rather lengthy prompt that then puts it into a nice explanation, and it went out there on the internet. It did include the word veil over here, some other things because I did ask it to do that. But here it's talking about all the different things that you can do in veil. So effectively, whatever I put into the prompt can be misinterpreted, as I did because I put the word veil in there. Had I put Aspen in there, everything would have said Aspen in there. So that's another way that you can go ahead and use that to create that. Another way, we often have, a lot of times we have resumes that we need to go through. So I just grabbed one of my old resumes and I just said, simply write me a summary of the following resume. And I simply pasted it in there. And this is ChatGPT's response. The resume belongs to Steve Imke, a business manager with over 10 years of executive experience, blah, 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 and it was in there. Then I said, here, tell me more. Now, this is interesting. Sometimes it gets better information, sometimes it's not. So here it went ahead and provided some more information about some of my job titles, a lot of other kind of things that went in there. But if you notice right here, it made an assumption that is incorrect. It said Steve has a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's in business here. It says he is proficient in the use of business software. So effectively, this is an untrue statement. And so I said, are you sure he has a bachelor's degree or whatever? And it responded again to that information saying, we're not really 100% sure, but you may want to check his LinkedIn profile and stuff like that. So again, it's never 100% perfect, and we understand that. And effectively, you need to kind of go through and manage a little bit. But quite frankly, this piece of information was more than enough I would want to use to find a summary of scanning through all of this sequential information and of my history as a resume. So very good tool for resume reviews. Another way that I use it. Oftentimes I hear a book, and before I decide I want to read it, I'd like to get a little bit more context on it. So here's a good example. I said, write me three key concepts discussed in the book, Invisible Influence by Jonah Berger. Now, quite clearly, I in fact have the book to go off and do that. I've read that book multiple times, but I'm using this primarily as an example. And so here's the summary that it brings up. And I have reviewed these particular pieces right here. It tells me, it includes the book right here, explores the power of social influence and how it affects our behaviors and decisions and actions. But here, notice I ask it into the context of being a business owner of a consulting company. And so here's the response that it gave me, very specific to if I was a business owner of a consulting company. And it talks to me how I might be able to use that particular content in there to be able to go ahead and increase loyalty and repeat businesses, if you can see that down. That's contextual to the engineered query that we designed up here. Another great example is I want to go ahead and I have a YouTube video that I did. I simply extracted the audio from the video, and it's all with ums and does and all that other kind of stuff. So I asked ChatGPT to go ahead and, can you fix the following text that represents the caption text from a YouTube video to make it grammatically correct and easier to read? And here I pasted in that's basically what I said, and it wrote a much more cogent content of my video that I could easily use as a supplement to the actual video that I was going to be using. Another great tool another great way to use a tool like ChatGPT. Thank you letters is another great way that I have used this in the past. So here, again, I asked ChatGPT, can you write me a thank you letter to a client named Fred Smith that just switched his multi-million-dollar marketing account to Imke Marketing? Reference in the letter that we hope that his wife's doctor's appointment turns out fine. Again, all that stuff gets included in here, and it even talks about, our thoughts are with you and your family during this time, best wishes, and it talks about the wife's doctor's appointment down here. So it puts all this basic information into something that's very respectful and something that can be easily copied, placed into an email, and be sent, and all I had to do was type a few words there. Another way that we sometimes use this in my household, for example, last night we had corned beef. So I said, I have some leftover corned beef. Give me 3 recipe ideas. And so I just asked for recipe ideas, and it responded here, a corned beef hash meal, a Reuben sandwich, and some corned beef tacos. Maybe this one right here, this corned beef hash, sounded interesting to me, so I said, can you elaborate on option number 1? It said, of course, and it gave me the ingredient list and, in fact, the actual instructions to actually make that dish. And finally, what I really want to talk about, which I don't really use too often, but my grandson is very much into robots. And so I bought him for Christmas a Maker MBot Neo robot. And so I was very specific, and I said, write me the Python code that I can use for, gave it the name of that particular product, Robot Kit, to follow a black line. And this is the actual code that my grandson could in fact use. He simply copy the code and place it right into his interface that connects right to the robot. It even provides some information on the bottom here because it made certain assumptions that I didn't include in there, like what happens if in fact there's a fork in the road, as you can see in the middle of this. And it tells you how it's going to respond to that. And it even tells you how it has to be hooked up for this particular robot here. He has to attach it to port 2 on the robot. And basically saying that if it was to port 1 or something else like that, I would have to go in the code and actually make that change. So when we sit there and we talk about the value of ChatGPT, it is really about not like a Google search or anything like that. It's not about cheating, about write me a book report or something like that. It really comes down very heavily to the engineering of the prompt that you put in. The more detail you put into the prompt, the more accurate the results will be. I hope this was somewhat informative for you as a result of understanding a little bit more about ChatGPT.